from the land. Wash me down, wash me down.
Blue, you're my boy! I think I'm entitled. You want answers. I want the truth. You can't handle the truth.
Ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention? I've just been handed an urgent and horrifying news story. And I need all of you to stop what you're doing and listen.
All right, we're back. We're going to have some new, what do you call it, snippets?
Entertainment.
Right.
That's entertainment.
Okay. I was criticized for my rank that it wasn't emotional enough, but I do want to come back with some other points of things that may have happened this last week as we're waiting for our guests to call in, and they will be, of course, you don't want to under-dramatize this, but there will be a debate on tax and regulated versus non-tax and regulating. Am I saying that right, Jamie? I want to make sure that I've framed the issue correctly.
I believe so.
Why don't you...
we'll probably learn more when we actually hear from these guys.
Okay, all right.
But generally, yeah, tax and regulate being part of the focus for a legalization or not. And then, of course, we could discuss the hybrid situation that's been brought up, which I think kind of is the more realistic. Hold on to the ability to do things at home, but also big business will be a part of it.
For those of you that have been paying attention, recent ruling in the Supreme Court dealing with your right to remain silent, your Fifth Amendment right, what sometimes is referred to as a protection under the Miranda. I want to just talk about that a little bit as a lawyer, give some advice and or at least some thoughts. In what I think was in May this past year, the Supreme Court had ruled that when an individual is advised of their right to remain silent or given the Miranda warnings, in order for them to exercise their right to remain silent, they have to say and verbalize that they are exercising the right to remain silent. Now, backing up for a second, people are mistaken often when they think that if they are not read their rights, somehow that's a constitutional violation and their case needs to be thrown out. It doesn't happen that way. That's for TV. When someone's arrested, there's no requirement under any circumstances that the law enforcement agency read you your Miranda warnings. The only time that your Miranda warnings need to be read are when you are in custody and law enforcement is attempting to ask you questions directly where they are questioning you. So, they arrest you and put you in a car and start driving, and you start offering commentary from the back seat. Those statements are not going to be protected. It will be used against you. That's what these other cases stand for. The point being that if you're going to exercise your right to say, I'm exercising my right to remain silent. And what had happened in this new case, this new Supreme Court case, which was Genovevo Salinas, was convicted in a 1992 murder in Texas. And what had happened was when they were questioning him when he was not under arrest and he had not been Mirandized, and they asked him, what color is the sky? He said blue. What color are your boots? He said brown. He said, what color is your shirt? He said red. They said, did you kill that person? He said, and remained silent. And they used that silence at that moment against him. That is silence, his acting silent of guilt.
So if you start a conversation with the police...
Well, he was not under arrest.
From the back seat of the car, and they start questioning you in a direction that you don't like, is there anything that can be done?
Well, the Supreme Court ruled that that is not going to fly, that the pre-custody silence cannot be used. That his case that they used against that silence overturned, reversed, which is how it should be. We want to make a quick announcement to our good friend and activist, of course, Jamie Fricke, Let's help keep Jamie out of jail. She's being targeted by her local county law enforcement. Really someone who's almost become legendary in his 42 years of
Gary Parks.
Law enforcement attack, but seemingly not wanting to really give in on what is clearly a move on the chessboard in favor of freedom and patients and public health. But after trumping up charges and several cases, the Taylor arrested a 5-felony count case, all related to her legal medical marijuana use and use medically. Please join us to support Jamie when? Saturday, June 29, 2013, 6 p.m. to 11 at the Village Grill, 5501 Main Street, Dryden, Michigan. The phone number there is 810-375-2525. Again, that's the Village Grill. Come out and support Jamie Fricke. 5505 Main Street in Dryden, Michigan, 48428. The phone number 1-810-375-2525. This event, of course, is sponsored by Michigan Hydro and Gardening Center and Planet Green Trees, and the Birmingham Compassion Club.
Indeed.
And
all kinds of sponsorship here.
That's right. Okay, so with that being said, I think...
Sorry, we're going streaking!
I think that we're getting ready to... see if we can... All right.
It's time.
On the phone, we should have our two proponents squaring off. First, I want to welcome Bruce Cain. Bruce Cain, welcome to the show.
Thanks.
Want to make sure can you hear us okay?
Yeah, how about here? Because I'm wearing a set of headphones. Is it clear or not?
You are coming in loud and clear. Good.
Thank you.
And Brad, most importantly, Brad Forrester, can you hear Bruce?
Michael, I can hear everybody just fine, thank you.
All right, I did not get, maybe you guys did try, but I do know a little bit about each of you. I know Bruce Cain, correct me if I'm wrong, living in Denver, has run for president recently and has a platform that encompasses the principles by which you want to talk about tonight. Is that true?
No, well, actually, I'm from Michigan.
Okay.
Yeah.
I may have been mistaken there.
Yeah.
But no, was the other backdrop stuff kind of accurate?
Yeah. I'm kind of, I've written about cannabis policy for a number of decades. I consider myself more of an anti-globalist, and I think that'll come out in this discussion a little bit.
Very good. Was there anything else you wanted to add in terms of, I was just trying to,
get some background?
Just some background, if you would. Just tell us two sentences are left. The producer, of course, was unable to come through. That's Jamie, Third Coast Compassion. And we're good, but I figured I want to give you a chance to just give us...
Something about MERP? Something?
Yeah. Marijuana legalization policy project. Basically, we just want people to be able to grow their own marijuana without tax, regulation, or control.
Okay. All right. So that's been your passion. That's your stance in the organization that you're promoting, and has spent a lot of work for. And I know Brad. I know more about Brad because I interacted with him more. And I'm the referee, and I'm going to play it fair. I don't want that to be a indication of things, and I play him to be tough in terms of questioning and whatnot. But Brad, I know from his involvement with the Cheboygan County Norml, and of course one of the original Medical Marijuana Association founders, and he's currently living in Cheboygan, Michigan, and he is taking the position to tax and regulate, which I do believe is the prevailing view for Michigan Norml. Is that right, Brad?
I would believe that would be Michigan Norml's position. As a national organization, certainly Norml is the ultimate consumer advocate. So anything that operates on behalf of the consumer, which taxed and regulated cannabis would be, is certainly, I think, a position they would support. I support it.
All right. Well, let me just ask this. So I want to be clear when we're talking about the different positions that each person has. So, Brad, I'm calling your posture here of tax and regulate, and Bruce, we're going to call yours. What do we call yours? Not.
I guess you could just call it no tax and regulate.
Okay. No tax and regulate.
Well, I think you could be safe to call it more of decriminalization, which is really what it boils down to be.
Okay. All right, so let's start with this. First question is, each of the programs or each of the positions that each of you take, is it ripe for right now? Is it something that can be implemented immediately right now in today's world, or is it something that has to be evolved through a legislator, or is our state or the federal level ready for it?
Who do you want to
Let's start with Bruce.
Okay. Yeah, essentially there's MERP and MERP 2. Now, MERP, I did a series of essays when we went against Prop 19 in 2010, which was really the original Tax Regulate and Control Initiative. In fact, that's exactly what it was called. And interesting, my good friend Jack Hare, and I hope a lot of people know him, he wrote The Emperor Wears No Clothes. And right before he had his heart attack at Hempstock, which was right before Prop 19 was launched, and he was going to launch CCHI, which was a kind of non-tax model, but he died, unfortunately. But what he said, and I'll quote this so I get it right, what he said in that last speech, right before he had his heart attack, is he said, I don't want to fucking give the United States government $1 of taxes. I think they should all go to jail for getting you and me and 20 million people arrested for pot. And I think what was I knew Jack for 21 years actually, and in our evolution together with this thing, we both supported Prop 215 in 96, which was the first tax and regulate, and then by the end, for Jack, I think he had become disillusioned because, he wanted hemp for all its purposes, for agricultural, industrial, recreational, medical use.
Yeah, you have supported tax and regulate in the past, but you've changed positions at this point. Is that what you're suggesting?
No, I've never really supported, and I think, I come from this from like kind of a old hippie point of view, because I smoked for the first time when I was 14. That was back in '68. And, back then in the hippie days, and I was a Unitarian hippie, the thing was about growing your own. The whole hippie movement was predicated on a huge distrust of government and kind of a, thing to go back to the land, to become sustainable. And I think that's where we are today, because the overarching thing, I think, on a global level is Agenda 21 and Codex Alimentarius, which wants to control food and nutrients and just about everything else. And, I'm more of the E.F. Schumacher model, like the book Small is Beautiful, this book on economics. And he wanted to see local economies, just like Henry Ford did, where people were locally producing their own foods and energy and things like that. And I think that's the direction we're going to have to go, beyond the marijuana movement, because otherwise there's really a movement to control everything. Monsanto wants to control the seed, and we have all this genetically modified food coming down. And so with MERP 1, I came to the conclusion that there were a couple things that had to be done. One, we had to completely take marijuana off the Controlled Substances Act. And the second thing basically was to get out of all the UN, drug accords. And that would need to come through, a special joint session of Congress, similar to what we did when they enacted the TARP bailout, which was, totally unconstitutional. But it took a special session of Congress to get that through. And I think it's necessary, because what you're seeing in Canada now and Washington and Colorado, that these tax and regulate models are basically throwing the home grower out of business. And, if you look at who knows how many people really grow, but you read statistics of maybe 30 to 60 million consumers. So I've got to believe there's got to be, in the United States, at least 4 to 16 million home growers that are contributing to the local economies. They're not able to write off anything, and and this has been going on for 50 years. Marijuana has been sold by small growers for many generations now, and the tax and regulate model, I think, inherently is going to monopolize control to states and select dispensaries, and that's exactly what we're seeing. We're seeing that in Washington, Colorado, Arizona, Canada, and it's almost as if this is being orchestrated at a very high level. You've seen all the shows on the History Channel, Discovery, all these shows on marijuana with the underlying theme that the only way to go is...
Listen, I want to be fair on the time, too, and even though
Sure.
it's fascinating, and I understand what you're saying, I do want to let Brad get in. I probably should have discussed, I guess the short answer is that what you're suggesting may not be immediately be able to be implemented, and it may be something that would require something significant, like you suggested, by an act of Congress. And I also want you also gave a little bit of the backdrop of the principle about what you're talking about. And but Brad, why don't you do a little bit of an opening statement and suggest if you think that tax and regulate is something that's in the foreseeable future on the state or federal level.
Well, ultimately, I hate to disappoint some of the listeners, but I think that people are going to find that Bruce's opinion and my opinion are relatively close, with a few minor exceptions. Certainly, from my perspective, and I'm not sure if this is a normal perspective, it very well could be, but preserving the individual's right to cultivate their own cannabis is a very, very important issue, and it should be central to any legislation that is either passed legislatively or through the ballot initiative process. So in that respect, I agree completely with Bruce. He articulated very well that Canada and several other states that have medical marijuana are beginning to outlaw home growers, because we have those states or those municipalities have a dispensary access available. So, I agree with Bruce in that sense, but I tend to stop disagreeing at the point where he was mentioning that home growers will be cut out of the business. Well, I don't think that home growing now technically is a business. And if mom and pop want to grow cannabis for a commercial market, then they would have to, do whatever the state mandates. I support Bruce's idea and his insistence that we're going to need some sort of federal change. Certainly the Controlled Substances Act is a problem, no matter what we do here in Michigan, in the state of Michigan. Until it's addressed at the federal level, all we can really do in Michigan is decide which direction we want to go after that federal change is made. Because once cannabis is rescheduled and hopefully the federal government permits states to decide their own marijuana policy, I think it would be much smarter for the advocate community to write ballot language that they can pass through the ballot process, as opposed to relying on our legislature to help us out with that effort. Because once it's passed on a federal level, our legislature will weigh in on it. And, we've seen what they've done to us already. I don't want them writing even Christmas cards, to be honest with you.
Right. Yeah, in the problem is what you're seeing also in Washington and in Colorado is, they're instituting these DUI tests on top of it, and the whole thing is just it's really turning logic on its head.
Let me throw a question at the moderator back at Brad, because one of the things I think we have to contemplate is really the short-term and long-term, because there's a number of different X factors that exist out there. So I think to really be fair to the process, you got to be thinking, in terms of different variables that could come up and where the state of the law regarding growing marijuana is going to be at that time. And we have different models to take from. I mean, there's a good argument, I think, basically on Brad, where you've got, if not the Colorado, but that would be what we would describe as a highly regulated industry that has changed the entire backdrop of how cannabis has been looked at medically, and now legally they're set to begin actually taxing and regulating for legal marijuana. And it's because, I think part of it was that they were able to facilitate a certain, legal environment that law enforcement was not so consumed with going after patients and caregivers, because they knew they were paying bills and kids' schools were paid for and their salaries, and they've taken from that money. So I think there's a value there. However, there's arguments here. I don't know that the individual caregivers were honored in that. I think that they've kind of been shut out, that whatever value they have had is not, having the same presence that, the system of caregivers would. But on the other side of it, in order to get there, Michigan is not prepared to allow, individual homeowner caregivers to have police access to their basements. I just don't think that kind of thing is going to take place. That's going to, bring about, that peace between law enforcement. So I guess, Brad, the question is, if you do a tax and regulate now and it begins to be successful, and you've got all the, the direction of the regulations in larger scale areas, and the smaller caregiver market gets shut out, what's to prevent the federal government from taking over then, or some other large pharmaceutical company from taking over then? When it's rescheduled, and everyone getting, having no, local caregiver market at all.
Well, quite honestly, I think there will always be, as long as we initiate and draft the language for the legislation, the statutes that govern this controlled substance. If we write that, we can write in the ability for home grows. We can write in what hoops that commercial entities have to jump through. We can write in the fact that this does not impact the Medical Marijuana Act or patients or caregivers. But we must do that. We cannot rely on our legislators to do that for us.
Especially with 4271. I mean, that's a disaster waiting to happen,
Well, let me ask you this, Bruce, let me put it back at you. We've had Mason Tavert on the show. We've had Keith Straub, who are all people that support tax and regulate, and they've all, and people from ASA, whatever, Jamie?
I'm not sure who you're referring to.
Steph
Scheer
and other proponents of, dispensary, tax rate, and they all maintain that the caregiver system, like we have in Michigan, can run adjacent to whatever developments happen in a caregiver system for dispensaries. What do you say about that, Bruce? Can they coexist?
Well, I think, unfortunately, I remember when I was a computer student at U of M, I had to take a course, Behavior of Organizations, and really the upshot of that whole course was that, eventually the big boys get everything, so just kind of live and bear it. And back to E.F. Schumacher, who wrote Small is Beautiful, he saw it that what we really needed is to get things back to the local community. And, the way it is now, I figure there are 4 to 16 million home growers that are probably supporting families, selling marijuana. And, if you get rid of 16 million jobs, that would be very significant. And these people are supporting their local communities. So what I came up with MERP 2 is really quite simple. I just said, give 2 to 4 1,000 watt, HPS bloom lamps for each adult. You have to be a legal American citizen to grow, and you can just simply gift, grow, and sell your overage without any taxes, regulation, or government control. You wouldn't be able to write anything off like a regular business. It would essentially maintain what's happened since the hippie days, where local growers just, sold their produce. I mean, that's it. And the benefit is that by doing this, you completely eradicate what I think is going to happen in Colorado and Washington and Michigan, which is the police are going to go after the home growers eventually because the states are going to be so emboldened by the tax revenue they get. And they don't deserve it because, it's been the city, state, and governments that have been persecuting consumers and growers for 50 years, all on a false foundation of things like marijuana is amotivational, causes brain cancer, lung cancer, this, that, and the other.
It's the reality that they're just going to eat it right now and just say, oh, okay, we're wrong. This is government. Don't they have to be bought off in some way? Don't they have to get something in return, instead of just completely, getting faced?
No, we don't have to give them anything. We do this we did alcohol.
Yeah.
We do this like we did alcohol. We give to each state to do what we're doing.
Are you saying
how about more like beer? How about more like beer? Because you can produce your beer in all 50 states, if I'm correct. And I can't think of the last time anybody got busted at 3 a.m. in the morning by the local police.
I know a lot of moonshiners who've been busted, and they still do.
I'm talking beer. Beer is totally legal.
I know, but there's an Anheuser-Busch there, and you don't want an Anheuser-Busch in the marijuana industry. I'm all for Anheuser-Busch in marijuana. I want to be able to go to Walmart or the pharmacy or my party store and buy a 10-pack of marijuana cigarettes for $10, just like I buy a 6-pack of beer. I think that's what the vast majority of cannabis consumers want.
But you also want to be able to grow in your own home if you choose to.
Yeah, I think the individual right to grow should be central to whatever we pass here in Michigan.
I just
keep the leverage.
Yeah.
I
just think that we need
your equation is that you would prefer to have the access than care or concern from where it's coming from. Is it important?
Don't get me wrong, Michael. I'm not willing to throw all these caregivers under the bus. These guys have performed a valuable service for a long time.
Exactly.
But I don't see any reason that they can't transition somehow, some way into the industry. That doesn't make sense to me. We're still going to need these many growers and many more, perhaps, when it's legalized, at least initially. There's no way R.J. Reynolds or Philip Morris can gear up that quickly to produce the amount of cannabis that's already called for.
Well, not only that, but you have to look at the tobacco industry. 95% of lung cancer due to tobacco is because they allow phosphate fertilizer that have radioactive polonium-210 in it, If we can't trust the tobacco industry with tobacco, I certainly wouldn't give them reign over marijuana.
That's only a strong argument for caregivers.
I think that what needs to happen is, if anything needs to be regulated, it would be the grow shops, to make sure that anything that is dangerous, in terms of a nutrient or additive, is kind of screened, so that people are, there have already been a couple of things, I can't tell you what they are, that have been taken off the market by grow stores because they turned out to be dangerous.
Well, I kind of take the view that if I'm going to buy it at a retail location, I want it to be a safe product. That means I want it to be inspected and regulated, and I know that to do all that, they have to tax it. and to give it the broad distribution so every adult who's over 21 has access. Because there's a lot of people that don't have access to cannabis right now. And if we make it available and we make it cheap and we make it safe, I think that satisfies the vast majority of cannabis consumers.
Yeah, but look at what's happening in Washington and Oregon and even Michigan. I mean, you go to even a place like Third Coast, you're paying $160 a quarter. A lot of these states want to levy 25% taxes and blah blah blah. And I just think it's a moral hazard.
$175 a gram. Third Coast.
Well, let me clarify even further. When it becomes legal and there is no pressure from law enforcement or the judicial system, the price will tumble. And, as a consumer advocate, I can't argue against that.
I wonder how.
I don't think we're even seeing that, though. I think prices are, if anything, going up in a lot of these states, as they impose these tax models.
Listen, I just rang the bell. You got to go to your corners. Hold on. I wanted to jump in because first of all, let me just do a quick break. You're listening to Planet Grangers. The call number is 1-347-326-9626. We are debating to tax and regulate or not to. We have Bruce Cain on the phone and also Bruce Brad Forrester. And I wanted to just jump in here. I think just to kind of lay a foundation as we move forward in the debate here. I know Bruce. Conceptually, if we allow and encourage everyone to grow in their basements, have no allowance of any law enforcement to come in, and everyone's just got this own quiet market, that market itself is running itself without any kind of oversight. And I don't even know if a law would need to be passed or how we would get there. But in the environment that we are right now, seemingly difficult to transform the mindset of a law enforcement community that is like really, an institution, so to speak. And I find it very difficult to make that bridge with law enforcement. Not that I don't think it should be, but just the way they've been trained and programmed for so many years about the money issue and it not being clean money in banks and things to that effect, and that it's they want to see it, and only in places, any progress, revolution with law enforcement and marijuana has been in the states that have provided resources being paid to the state. That seems to be the trade-off. So how do you get around that in that environment?
Well, I mean, you have to look at it. I mean, I remember back in '90, I was at a meeting in Dearborn where they were doling out all these grants to all the local law enforcement that were predicated on them busting people. I want to get the police back to their legitimate duties of protecting the safety of the communities and getting out of the homes and the privacy of individuals. And what even bothers me, and what bothers me more is when these smart meters come in, which they're already coming into Michigan. They're basically eventually going to be able to data mine every grower in the state. It's going to be like shooting fish in a barrel. So we have to, we have to be proactive.
Yeah, but you're I'm just saying, like, as I play devil's advocate with you, there's nothing that your system would offer to the law enforcement community that would encourage them and where they're coming from to want to be behind it. They would always see it's their biggest public safety nightmare because it's an unregulated group of individuals that are. It's like it's that old saying that I heard someone say once, we're a nonprofit group, ask the guy at the door.
That's why you've got to do these things in a way that the police don't get a say, which means that they will never come through the legislature this way.
Good point, Jeff.
Right. And at the same time, just think about it. During the Carter administration, they were spraying paraquat on marijuana. I remember those days. And the government didn't care about that, And I think, most consumers are pretty smart. If they see weed that has mites or signs of, fungus or mold, they'll go to somebody else. And the fact of the matter is, nobody, even Harvard Professor Myron, he doesn't want to acknowledge the fact that this system, this informal system of home growers, has really been in effect for 50 years, and it's worked with incredible efficiency, you know.
Well, I do say that all the time. I say that, you know, the people that are using marijuana or have been using marijuana have been getting it exactly as it is right now from people growing in their basements and the type of caregiver system that exists now. But for medical purposes, there is a whole other group of persons, you might say, or even maybe recreational users that would be more inclined to try it, use it as medicine if they were getting it at a location that they're accustomed to buying goods. You know, if it became, as Brad described it, I'm not saying even advocating for it, but, you know, I remember we had a mayor from Berkeley, and I always refer to her, where she kept talking about, well, I would want to, you know, she was open-minded about it, but she probably had never gotten marijuana from someone's basement before, and she was trying to see it medically and would want to get it from something similar to a, not necessarily pharmacy, but something at a store. There are people that are like that in the world that would come around, I think, you know.
Yeah, but Keith Straub even said that when he was on the show that it would only at most double if it were fully legalized, which would be up to like 15%, I think he said.
Just fewer than the number of active drinkers. All right, anyways, what do you say about that, Brad?
Well, you know, law enforcement is part of our community. And, again, when we are talking about broad sales of a legal product, I think they have to be integrated into the equation. You know,
why?
It's hard to keep this product in the basement any longer. I mean, that's what we're fighting to do, is really to get it out of the basement.
No, I don't think we are at all. I think we want to keep it in the basement. We want to keep it in the basement so that this cottage industry of home growers that's been here with us for at least 50 years is maintained, so that these people are spending their money on food, clothing, and services within their community. I mean, you start upping it to a centralized number of dispensaries, you know, like maybe Third Coast and a couple others, let's say, take over in Michigan. You know, you can get rid of your trimmers with automated devices and everything else, and you know, you're going to put all these people out of business. And you know, these growers, these home growers. I mean, I've been dealing with Jack's. Jack Harrer had some of the best growers I ever knew. But you know, these people have a great pride in what they do, and I think that what you really need is, if anything, is just best practices, and you know, making sure that the hydro stores aren't selling things, nutrients, etc., that are dangerous to the product, and you know, just good old education. You know, I mean, nobody wants to grow bad weed, and they call it weed for a reason. You know, but you know, you're better growers. You know, it's something that takes a while to.
Is that an answer, though, to the police
It's an art
problem?
that takes a while to perfect, I think, you know.
Is that an answer, though, to the police problem or the police issue, which is that, you know, they're not trusting of the existing medical cannabis community as it is? I think they've taken an approach to, you know, look for loopholes where they can arrest instead of looking for reasons to.
I believe under MRP they would arrest the people with 5,000 watts and above.
Oh yeah, because I really wanted, you know, I want everybody, you know, I want as many people to be involved. And, you know, the thing about MRP, too, is, you know, I'm really agnostic about this because I don't think anybody knows. I mean, it could be that everybody will grow their own stuff and, you know, nobody's going to make any more money off it. But I just want to see a free market. And I don't want the police to have any more reason to come into people's homes anymore, you know, because like my parents lived in Dearborn, and a couple people next to their house got busted about 2 years ago, and I went through the CAFR report for Dearborn, and I found that in 1 year the city of Dearborn made $930,000 from drug arrests and forfeiture, you know, so the cities are making a huge amount of revenue off of busting people.
And how are
you got to believe that 80% of that.
What do you think you have 5,000 watts?
All right, listen to me. Bruce, how are you going to take that $900,000 away from them and tell them to not arrest and get that money where they've been getting it, low-hanging fruit, making law enforcement fun again? And how are you gonna put a void in that, fill that void with the policy of don't go after it anymore? I mean, how is that going to change? Whereas, and I'm just saying, and I am not taking a position
that people can have 2,000 to 4,000 watts is not going to keep the police out of people's homes. They're just going to say that they think that they have 5,000 watts.
And why are they going to let that industry go unfettered with, where those...
There's no way for the police to regulate.
And where are the disputes going to be rendered? Where's the relief and within the industry of places by which, there can be a reasonable functioning location where contracts can be enforced and people can be held accountable for their,
And anybody who's cultivating for commercial purposes or selling for commercial purposes can write off those expenses on their taxes. Dispensaries are suffering from that. And, again, I'm not a champion of dispensaries, so to speak, but I'm a champion of broad access. I think it should be available at thousands of locations across this state. It should be a safe product, and it should be cheap. And I think the majority of cannabis consumers in this state, in this country, that's all they want. They don't want to grow it. I wouldn't grow it if I didn't have to.
I'll echo some of what Brad was saying about the eventually getting to broad access and cheap. We've seen over time from having a central location where there is developed an area where people can come and bring their medicine, and they have to create a situation over time, especially when more places come in, where their medicine is the most desirable by all of the factors that the patients ultimately want to have. And so we have seen the quality and consistency go up and the costs come way down. And if you broaden that, as Brad is suggesting, it'll get even better for people, more access and cheaper.
Again, we're talking about legalization for recreational consumers here, not medical people. That's a whole other topic, and we have a Medical Marijuana Act that addresses that.
I'm kind of confirming what Brad's saying. If it's part of a regulatory system, then they will get duly compensated just like they do with enforcement of all other regulated things.
I mean,
regulation, tax, and control has always been historically used by the big boys to push the little guys out of the business. That's what I was talking about when I was talking about that course I took in behavior of organizations. And it's kind of an ideology. It's like telling people, well, in the end, the big boys get everything. And what I'm saying is that, look at the reality. For the last 50 years, most people have been getting their cannabis from local growers. A lot of them have been growing in their basements. And I think that's the wave of the future. I want to see people growing their own foods, getting away from these GMO foods, having best practices, having a lot of proud growers that are, proud about the product that they produce. And I mean,
but that's an ideological argument.
I'm just really asking for a free market where
one.
people can basically, just choose who they want to buy from. And once the police are out of the picture, like Brad Forrester is right. I mean, if you have 5,000 watts, well, you're out of the limits, and then you should be penalized. But as long as you stay within those limits, even if they come in your home, they might as well be ghosts. They won't be able to do anything, And the lights are only for bloom, I mean, I don't care. Basically, a good grower can get about 1 gram per watt if they know what they're doing. And
nobody should be arrested for growing pot, Bruce. And I would rather go to Michael's house and pay him $1 a joint than go to your house and pay you $7 a joint, because that's really what we're talking about here. And it's not just the group of guys who are making a living from it right now, who I acknowledged, who I appreciate, and who I suggest would be able to transition into some new industry. But we can't hold back we don't have that ability. When federal action occurs and rescheduling takes place, or descheduling, let's hope, you're going to see the big boys get in, and that's only good for consumers.
Well, I differ with that. I believe that the people are the government, and I think that, given 50 years, 80 years actually, of total bullshit, about marijuana being dangerous, then it turns out that it's actually good for you. It's good for people with MS, glaucoma. People are getting the CBDs out of the leaf.
But those are all
helping
medical
with Crohn's
applications.
disease and things
What
like that.
about the guy who wants to smoke a joint on Friday night to relax?
Well, then he just buys weed from his local grower. That's all. I mean, it's no big deal. I mean, that's been going on for 50 years.
But it's still an underground activity. The weekend warrior doesn't have a local grower, buddy.
Under MERP, too, it won't be an underground activity. And what I'm saying is, the thing is, like in California, after Senate Bill 420 went through, and you got people in Mendocino, in the Tri-County area, and they're growing like 50 plants, and out there in California, each of those plants can bring actually pounds of weed. And I'm just saying, let's just kind of make it a free and fair market where nobody has any advantage, and a lot of people will be able to make livings. A lot of people will be able to contribute to their communities, and it's going to keep it completely out of the hands of big pharma that way, because I'm telling you, I think the dispensaries will only be a transitional phase. These big boys you're talking about, like the tobacco industry, Monsanto.
Let me jump in. In a way,
the police will love that plan.
Well, first of all, Bruce, what you're talking about is really having like people being more self-sufficient, from the community, kind of more of a communal interaction, almost like, a raw food concepts where you grow it around yourself instead of getting it from elsewhere, more in control of it. And some people that appeals to, some people want to get their food at a supermarket and they don't care. Of course, this is probably most of the cause of sickness that exists. All the worst food for you is the cheapest food for you, and it's all controlled by, whoever's putting it on the shelves. I do want to say this, though, Bruce. I think there's two very important principles that are going on here, and I think the real question is, can these two things coexist, or is one going to overtake the other? Because for example, I think unquestionably the concepts of regulation, and you hear this as being the main theme amongst the activists across the country, some levels of regulation. It's almost like a peace offering with law enforcement, and of course, for some reason, it's they become the bounty. They get the money instead of the black market, and that's like the way it's laid out. There's a give and take there, and but at the same time, I think it's absolutely significant that the home grow is protected and that it is enforced as much as possible to be the exclusive method by which the production of marijuana comes from. I think you get into a lot of trouble. And I don't know if this is possible, but I ideally would see the situation where you wouldn't have like large-scale grows taking over, but multiple individuals who are supplying locally under that kind of, if that was going to happen. But, the real question is, what's going to happen when it's rescheduled. And what I think the better question is this: when things change at the federal level, which group is going to be growing the plants? Because whoever's growing the plants will be in the best position to leverage, what they want. If the control of the growing of plants at that point when it goes down is, a larger group where they're all centralized, I think it, causes issues of, a simple takeover versus, multiple individuals throughout the, more of collective cooperatively, where they're not singled out, as Bruce is suggesting, is a much more, better strategy for the long term. The question is, can they coexist? And, which one is the more successful path in the immediacy.
Because it won't be over until the feds.
Yeah, because whatever we're doing right now doesn't matter until, we get to that point. It's just a question of where are we going to be standing between, at that time and what is the path that's gotten us there. Bruce, your thoughts?
That's exactly right, and that's my point when I make the claim that we need to draft the legislation. We cannot let our legislators help us with this task. They've proven that they are much more conservative about these issues than we are. We have to write the language. And that way we can ensure the preservation of individual grows or home grows or whatever you want to call them, but each individual adult should be able to grow 6 plants, 12 plants, whatever number we want to put on that.
Is that even
that should be central to anything, and that's the leverage. But all of this is to prepare ourselves. We need to have this law in place when the federal law changes. That way we have the leverage to negotiate, because at that point, the legislature is going to do whatever they can do to try to amend what we have passed.
What do you say about that, Bruce? Bruce, here's a good question. Bruce, let me just ask it this way. I quoted Jack Hare often about his thing where he says, in order for marijuana re-legalization to take place, it's got to be the most important issue in every election. And his other thing was that he couldn't believe, with all the people that were buying marijuana, that the organizations didn't have more revenue to fight the laws that are prohibiting, whatever it is that's causing problems. And that's an important point, that where is the money going to come from if you don't have a organized, centralized location to because it's not really there so much in the medical or re-legalization community. Do you understand what I'm saying? Where's the money going to come from? The fight.
Well, first let me just say this. I collected 1 out of 400 signatures for the 2008 Medical Marijuana Initiative, and then in the lame duck session in 2012, they just gutted it, and they wanted to give the list to the local police. The legislature betrayed us. And, I guess I'm preparing for the global collapse. I think very soon local communities are going to have to grow everything, because I think eventually this exponential growth system we're in is going to collapse. And, just look at what Obama's doing lately. It should scare the shit out of everybody, he might have done an extrajudicial killing just the other day of this guy. And all I'm saying is that, this system that I'm talking about, MERP 2, in essence, has been the modus operandi, for the last 50 years. That's how most people have been getting their marijuana, from local growers. I'm just saying, let's legitimize it. Let's push the police completely out of it, because...
Well, how are they out of it? Any time somebody sets up over 4,000 watts, the police are going to be right back into it.
Or said another way, just the city of Dearborn itself, you're going to take $900,000 away from them and give them nothing in return, and sell them on the idea that all the people that they arrested for drug crimes are going to be free to do it on their own, and just don't bother them, and whatever money or transactions or activity take place is going to be untouchable.
That's exactly what I'm saying. They're just the police have acted out of greed. I've been at these meetings, I was there in 1990 when they started.
So, give me a solution. One of the major issues with the implementation of the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act is, there's been very little, if any, education towards changing the way law enforcement looks at it.
Nobody told them to stop enforcing the marijuana laws that are on the books. How do we tell them to do that?
85 years of the greatest propaganda campaign in the history of media is not easily washed away with, some kind of, laissez-faire, approach to, an industry that they've been, so obstructionist about. That's what I'm saying.
Can I just say something? If you want to get down to it, and Jack and I were very good friends for 21 years, and we talked often. And what we both understood was that the very reason marijuana became illegal was not because of racism or, black guys going after white girls or brain damage or anything. What it was about was Rockefeller in the oil industry, Hearst in the paper industry, and DuPont in the synthetics industry. They were afraid of competing against hemp because it could be used to do all these products. That's the reason it started. And the globalists are scared shitless about people, because MERP 2, the only thing I've written so far is about home growers, right? But I want people to be able to grow seeded weed out in their yards for the seed from which they can get their own their own hemp flour, their own omega-3, omega-6 fatty acids in their diet. I mean, I'm talking, what I'm really talking here, I just want to make this clear. What I'm talking about here is a global revolution against the globalists, and that's what MERP 2 is truly about. I just want to make that clear.
Okay. And I just want to stop arrest here in Michigan. So
and
that's
and
the
MERP
stark
2
difference
would do that.
between Bruce's
MERP 2 would
position
do
and
that.
mine.
I mean, because as long as you're staying under, for 1,000
under tax
law
and regulate,
plants,
nobody gets arrested
for growing. Plenty for anybody, I would think.
Under tax and regulate, nobody gets arrested for growing any number of plants.
Yeah, they do. If they don't register, they're going to get busted. I mean, these police are not. I've been covering this for over 20 years. They're going to keep busting people. They're going to use NREM forfeiture to take their homes to support the pensions of city workers. That's what they're going to do. That's what they've been doing for decades now.
They can do that as long as federal law is there, I believe, and
that's why I'm saying we have to deschedule marijuana from the Controlled Substances Act and remove ourselves from all the UN globalist accords. I mean, you have to understand, what I'm really getting at here with MERP 2 is I want to dethrone the globalists. I want to dethrone Monsanto. I want to dethrone assholes like Obama that supports Monsanto and supports this drug war. We are in need of a sea change.
I'm just going to take a caller right now.
Okay.
You're going to call our 989 number. Waiting on the call. Maybe this will as it comes to 989. You're on the air. Welcome to Planet Green Trees. We've got exactly.
Hello. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Doing good, Michael. It's Timmy.
Timmy, how you doing? Thanks for calling in.
Doing fine.
What do you think about the conversation? Want to jump in on it?
Oh boy, this is a huge pot of worms. There's actually two different levels of conversation, and that would be federal and state, obviously. Bruce touched on a huge topic on the federal with the whole reason why it became illegal. And this is why I truly believe federally, unless it's done as a political agenda, it will never be done legally, because the powers that be in those industries, the pharmaceutical industry, the textile industry, the fuel industry, won't let it come to because they are afraid of that competition.
Exactly.
Federally, I see that as not. It's going to be, if it ever comes legal federally, it's going to be because somebody's pissed off leaving and they do it as a fuck you, excuse my language, on the way out of office.
Or if 25 or 30 states say we're not enforcing federal cannabis laws anymore.
Exactly.
In fact, we're legalizing it, and we're going to make it available to everybody, just like they did with alcohol.
Right. That's the second avenue, is the state issue. If we're going to, we got to look at this. Where do we want to affect ourselves? I mean, ideally, we can only really totally affect ourselves in the state. I believe that's where we should really focus ourselves. But those same federal entities of the tax and regulate come into the state because it affects people in the state. We've got Dow Chemical here, and if hemp were legal and they were able to make a lot of the chemicals out of hemp, boy, that's a whole bunch of Dow Chemical that might have to buy into the program. And you can't tell me that Dow Chemical wouldn't grow hemp to turn it into chemicals.
Can I just interject that Bill Schuette is the son of one of the CEOs of Dow Chemical?
Actually, he was the son of two. His original father was CEO, passed away. His mother married the guy who became CEO.
Oh, well, that's news to me. But yeah, good.
But, so, I mean, on a state level, we've got a cannabis law with the medical issue. We got 4271. I see some problems in that. My biggest concern in it is with its own supremacy clause of no other act supposes this one. Without it succumbing to the 08 Act, that could be a conflict right there. That would give them the newer law with the supremacy clause to legislatively do whatever they wanted to the Act, because the newest one has the legislatively supremacy clause, right?
Which means they basically ignored the 63% of the Michigan voters that voted this thing in.
I see that as a very, very good potential. It's a very probable. It's in the cards. It's there if they want to play it, and I can't see them not dealing the cards that way.
Brad,
with that
Brad,
being said,
well, let me ask you this: is the idea of taxing and regulating in Michigan right now for the purposes of providing revenue to the state? Is that a message that you think is one that our current government is listening to?
I think that, Michael?
Yeah.
I think if I may, I think the people who are on our side of this fence, we'll say the medical people, the people who don't care if marijuana is illegal or not, they don't use it, but they don't care. They know it's not, a dangerous thing. They know it's safe for alcohol. Those people, yes. Even legislatively, those people who are looking at that on that level, looking at the revenue going, yes. I think they're short-selling their view in the fact they're not looking deep enough to see the other side of the coin. That is why it won't happen legislatively. I think 4271 is going to get a big push and a big flop unless they think they can totally take out the 08 Act doing it. Personal opinion.
Brad, what's your thought on that? Do you think that Michigan, at this time where we are right now, they want a honest discussion is taking place in Lansing about potential revenue for the state, or is that something that they don't want to get into?
Well, I could speculate from now till Sunday, but let's go based on what they've said. Jace Bolger, the House Speaker of the House here in Michigan, was on off the record a couple weeks ago, last week or something, and he said clearly he is willing to have a discussion about decriminalization. He views cannabis use like a speeding ticket. I don't view it that way at all, personally, and I found it quite insulting, and I don't think that he gets the message. He got the message that it costs the state of Michigan and law enforcement agencies in general. It costs them money to arrest cannabis users, but I don't think they've looked at any potential revenue generated by taxing cannabis at this point. They may have had some backroom discussions regarding it, but I think they're probably taking a wait-and-see attitude. Colorado is going to start rolling their program out pretty quick, so within the next year we'll have some insight into exactly what types of revenues are generated from legal cannabis sales. And, maybe in the future they'll pay more attention to, the possibility of revenues, but, I would caution our side not to rely so much on the economic argument that it's going to bring in tons of revenue. I know that in Colorado they promised a bunch of money to the schools, that this was going to help them save their school system. I think that might be over-promising, and I think that could be detrimental to our cause here in Michigan.
Well, we see
besides, they don't deserve the revenue. Don't you see it? I mean, they've been persecuting us for 80 years.
But
they've been putting growers
but to try to get them to give up that revenue, plus these asset seizures that Michael was talking about, which I think in Michigan amounted to $26 million in 2011. It's serious money. They don't really want to give that up. That's why we have to kind of take it back, and we have to draft the legislation, and we have to get it passed. We can't rely on legislators.
Yeah. And unfortunately, when I wrote MERP 1, I did 50 essays, which you can find at New Age Citizen. And you go to the MERP tag. I wrote about 54 essays on that around 2010. I don't think it's possible to really have a final solution, if you will, until we take care of descheduling marijuana, should have never been scheduled, and get away from these international drug accords. I mean, that is unavoidable.
Let me ask you this: what is there's no immediate path per se to that. How are you going to? What is going to be the reason that someone, for example, from Bill Schuette's office is going to listen to you and agree with you as to why we should, how you're going to convince him or someone from his office that
5,000 watts and above,
or just to be able to just keep their hands off and let it go after all of this? I mean, what is the reasoning that is going to be most convincing to that most stern opponent to follow this path if there's no money in it for them, that they're going to get nothing from it? Even if you're right, Bruce, and I do agree with you, they don't deserve it. They deserve none of it. They should be given it back. There should be reparations, okay? So don't think that I'm not with you, that I'm just saying this is politics. This is an institution that's been rolling as gangster for 80 years. How do you make the peace? And I say that the one thing you see out of Colorado is, and I don't like the Colorado, but I say the one thing that is almost there is that people feel safe in some venues, that they can conduct certain behavior and activities, and that's because of this level of regulation. Now, the fear is that it just drives off in a direction that stomps out the local grower, but I think the real challenge is to make sure that they can coexist, and every chance is developed to allow the local caregivers to be the source of whatever these places are. But that's difficult for government to accept because it's more difficult to regulate. So I don't know, somewhere in there's an answer.
Can I throw something in here and
sure,
I'll jump off the line? One of the political, you're right, Michael, it's a very politically charged argument. One of the biggest arguments that we haven't talked about on this side of the fence that I know is being talked about legislatively is the economic standpoint. Tax and regulates right along there, but there's a backside to that sword. Let's say we decriminalize it tomorrow or Monday morning. It's decriminalized here in the state of Michigan, right? No longer a problem. They're going to lose a lot of police officers because there's a lot of arrests they're not going to make. There's going to be judges that in caseload's going to go down because they're not going to go to court. There's going to be guards that are going to have to be let off of jobs because there's not going to be as many prisoners to guard. Now, on the economic side,
I would beg to differ because they're only prosecuting 1 out of every 4 murderers. They're prosecuting 1 out of 5 kidnappers. There's plenty of police work to do. It's hard work. It takes brains.
With that.
They don't want to do it.
I agree with that, but we got to look at the cash cow system here. Would they rather arrest pieheads or murderers?
That's why
we've seen that.
Have to take the bull by the horns and write the legislation.
But I mean, the point I'm
making. How are you going to get over that?
Let me put this point out, and I'll get over. I'll jump off line. The economic hit to the state. And then if you go to that federally, I agree with you, Bruce, that those jobs should be filled in other places, but we know they won't be for the most part. But that's going to be a large hit. And we figure half of the population in prison right now is on a drug charge. If half of that population's let out, that's a lot of people who won't be employed. And with our economic times, I don't see them cutting their throat on the left side for the few penance they will gain on the right side on the tax and regulate. That's why I think I
heard in Michigan only 10 to 12% are in prison on a marijuana possession charge. So they're only going to have to let go 10 or 12% at the most. And like I said, there's a lot of criminals out there that are running around every day that aren't being caught because they're hard to catch. Let's put our police on catching the hard-to-catch guys.
I couldn't
You're
agree
right.
more.
Whoever mentioned the slush fund and the dollars for collars that these narcotics task forces get from the federal government, that's wrong.
Exactly.
And the only way it will stop is if each state says, no, we will not arrest marijuana people for the federal government anymore. We're done.
They get a lot of state money there. I'm going to jump off, guys. Thanks for letting me on. But, yeah, I think economically it's a big hit.
If you could send me the statistic about the $26 million in asset forfeiture, do you have a link to that?
I'm not on the computer right now, but it's all over there. If you just do a search for asset forfeiture, Michigan,
okay, I'll
State of
do
Michigan.
that. Let me suggest two things. One, I think there are two things that we need to concentrate, and I was talking about this in the 90s. One is jury nullification. We need to educate the people so that anybody that gets busted, the jurors nullify the decision. You know, they don't care. They're not gonna. And the second thing is, I think what we need to do is what Obama did with people. We need to find these judges that are persecuting these people, and we need to bring the drug war to their homes. We need to go to where they live and pick it right outside their homes and say, enough, it's done.
Well, yeah. On a state level, I believe that could be done by suing the registry and taking it away from them. It's what gives the state every bit of power right now. They would have to do everything legislatively, and it's messed up and it's screwed up as it is right now that they'll never get anything accomplished. If we take their power away from them, they're left to at least where we were back in 2008.
Yeah, because, you know, what I'm really suggesting with MERP is that we're at a bifurcation point in civilization. We're living under this petro-corporate Ponzi epic, this exponential
Yeah, but now
model.
you're talking a U.S. issue that has to be done through the entire U.S. Yeah, I mean, we have to start somewhere, and locally, you're right, that's where it's going to have to start, but that's a big issue for a small state.
Well, let me put it this way. I really think we are at the same point we were at the American Revolution. The American Revolution was against the East Indies Tea Company, which was selling opium and trying to turn us into slaves. And today we have a global government that Obama is pushing, and we're going to have to do the same
heroin
thing.
importer in the States.
But that's getting quite a bit of ways from cannabis reform.
Yeah,
because it can't impact any of those
Exactly.
changes.
It calls for the bell.
Right. That's what I mean. You know, we got there's a federal thing and a state thing, and we're in the state of Michigan, and we can affect the federal level, but only after we affect the state of Michigan, in my opinion. I'm gonna head off, guys. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Tim.
Thanks for calling in.
Yeah, and like I said, when I did MERP, before I came with MERP 2, which was so far I've only specified for home growers. I've got some other ideas for industrial use and things like that. But I'm just saying, I've been studying this for 40 years, and I mean, there's no way to stay away from that larger hill that we have to climb at the federal level. If you want the feds out of this, you're going to have to deschedule marijuana from the Controlled Substances Act. You can't get away from that, because what Obama's been doing over the last 5 years is he's been using federal law.
But Bruce, you and I can't reschedule. The federal Congress doesn't have the intestinal fortitude to attempt rescheduling. So the only way to effectively reschedule at the federal level is for 30 states to say, we're done with cannabis prohibition. That's how we get the federal done.
Or it could be done. It could be done for a special joint session of Congress, just like they do.
But they're not going to do it. They won't.
The better question is, what is their motivation to do that, other than to agree with you? Because it's not. I mean, you're speaking of Thomas More's utopia, where the government is doing what's, this is about money at this point and business, and you're probably right about many of the, motivations behind how the business got to the way that it did and how certain products became Americanized and others were outlawed. I'm not disagreeing with that, but what is the incentive now for anyone in a world that is capitalist? Why is all of a sudden this free, unchecked, where's the sell? I hate to say it. And this is not me thinking, I'm just thinking, they're my words in terms of a view, but I see that as being the hurdle. What do you say to that, Bruce Cain? The last word.
Well, what I say is that at the beginning of this country, from 1630 to 1830, you could pay your taxes growing hemp. And Jefferson was in favor of the yeoman farmer, that was self-sufficient in growing his own food. We need to get back to that. That's what I'm saying.
I hear you. Listen, everything you're saying is beautiful. I really do, and I agree with you in a very, it has a utopian sense to it, and I'm sorry that I'm such a, Debbie Downer, because I just see the worst of it in the courts, and I just see the opposition side of it. And in principle, it would be beautiful if we all could simply, do that. Not in terms of the end line, the end game, without, Brad might even jump into that too. Like if we could all just do that, and it was okay. Maybe you're going in your house.
Hey,
some people might have.
I'm on record right now as saying I support reparations for anybody who was arrested for a cannabis offense. I agree with Bruce 100% on that.
This episode really seems to prove to me that cannabis reform should not be looked at through the lens of economics and should be looked at instead by how we're going to deal with how the police act, what is a criminal act and what is not, and if there's anything legal or not legal about cannabis.
But at the same time, there's got to be, I hate to say it, but we've all identified that it's a big money game. It's an easy money game. It's a low-hanging fruit. Everyone is mellow, easier to take them and time and bill, and they got cost recovery and costs and probation. It's a money game. So why are they going to give that up? And my thing is that...
Yes, if you don't tell them they can't arrest anyone at all for cannabis, then they will keep arresting some people for cannabis.
That's right.
But
that's it.
That's right.
But in the end game, it would be nice if we didn't have to go there. I just see this one hurdle as this institutionalized, methodology. I think in the end game, if you could somehow, but see, that always seems to be the issue, and I think this is where the end debate, the end of the debate ends with, Mason Tvert, like any methods of regulating where you're in some way contracting with the government in approval, right? The more you get them to come forward in any way, and I'm not saying it's right or wrong. It's a completely political position. It's steps towards a common ground. You shake hands and they've put it in writing and there's agreements and understandings, and it's a step in a direction where there's more recognizable, safe activity that is, less and less going to end you up in jail. That seems to be, and it happening most importantly by the way of voting and, initiatives and statewide ballot and things like that. That seems to be the trend. But, there's an objective there, I think, with in terms of a short term to long term, but of course it has its risk. Bruce, how do you put it in that context though, in terms of, what do you design for the immediate activity of someone that's going to get to your utopia that you speak of?
Well, I think we just have to get real about this. The police for like the last 50 years have been persecuting us to make money. You guys have been saying this, and with MERP 2, if you could have, let's say we had the top limit, I said 2 to 4. Let's say you could have 4,000 watt HPS bloom lights in each home. Well, that's a huge amount of weed. Anybody could make a living off that, and I just don't think the police deserve anything. It's not their place to violate our rights. They're ripping up our Bill of Rights, and it needs to stop. And we're at an end game now. If you look at what Obama's been involved in lately, he's moving us towards global government and possibly a third world war in Syria. What's that?
We're getting away from cannabis policy.
But the thing is, I guess what I'm saying is, it's all connected. It's all connected, all the way back to Rockefeller and the Marijuana Tax Act of 1937. It goes back to that. It's all been about control.
And that's why we have to organize people and state by state beat them back like the dogs they are.
I totally agree.
reform and a future.
I like to think it's not even going to take 30 states to get Congress to be involved in a serious discussion on what they think they're going to do about federal policy in these states. I'd like to think they're starting to talk about it now, if you're seeing Colorado and Washington.
Well, they must be starting to talk about it at least.
Well, how many states did it take to end alcohol prohibition? Wasn't it 33 or 36? It was a significant number.
Interesting.
They're not going to give this up like you guys keep saying. This is huge money. They will not give up the money. We have to take it back. I like Bruce's attitude. And frankly, a lot of my life, I live according to the principles that he articulated. I think they're great points. I'm more of a minimalist. I don't need a lot of things. But that's my decision to live that way. And I think somebody in the city who is accustomed to things and going places and doing things, they shouldn't be denied those opportunities. And that's how, by broadening the access to cannabis through thousands of retail outlets, we make it fair for everyone.
Well, again, unfortunately, the problem is when you allow, the dispensary model. Like I like co-ops, but unfortunately, what happens with the dispensary model is that the dispensaries concentrate the power, and then the supply and demand diminishes the value of what the producers produce, and then it just ends up towards monopoly. And the fact is, that's exactly what we're seeing in Colorado, Washington, and Canada. The states are basically going, we'll give it over to our crony buddies, they'll make all the money, and we'll put all the home growers out of business.
Well,
it's
don't individuals in Colorado have the ability to grow 6 plants all by themselves?
Well, I think
they do.
what you're going to see in Washington State, they're not. They're really taking
Lou, you're my boy!
They're taking the whole thing away. In Canada, the same way. I mean, the Canadians, especially in British Columbia, are going, nuts now because they're throwing all the home growers out of business. It's a huge deal.
And I understand that, and I have sympathy for them. But the best way for us to protect our boys that are helping us out right now is to legalize it and protect these guys.
I think I'm entitled. You want answers. I want the truth. You can't handle the truth.
All right. I just wanted to take a break because we do have one other guest that we want to get in here. This debate is just fascinating. I think we go on all night. Throw a little Creed into there.
We did go over a little bit, didn't we?
I think any people's initiative on this subject just needs to be framed as a repeal of prohibition.
And in conclusion, I think that everyone agrees more, and I think we all understand that the discussion of money is just in terms of the political aspects of the role that it plays in all this. I think we would all agree that the place where it would be great if we had this kind of utopian society that Bruce references, where there was an understanding and people could interact, and there was no, it was. I don't think anyone would disagree with it. I think, and even we have, Brad's position, which
the legislature is going to amend it after it's passed by the people. Whatever it is, they're going to have to amend law to get rid of laws that are there, or amend the laws that are there to implement the People's Act.
Well, just in terms
and
of
that's why that should all be in our ballot language. We shouldn't leave anything to chance. We should mandate that they amend the public health code, pull out every reference of the word marijuana or THC or cannabinoid.
Then you're left with Schedule 1. Are you also saying deschedule at the same time from the state schedule?
In Michigan, yes, absolutely. That would all be in the same legislation, along with legalizing hemp and protecting the right of individuals to grow their own without infringing on the Medical Marijuana Act. We can write all that stuff in, but we cannot expect the legislature to write that in for us.
No.
That's why our ballot initiative is so important, guys.
They will
and
restrict
if I
it
could
from
just mention
there.
what happened during the lame duck session in 2012, where they limit. We have the McQueen case where you can only sell to your 5 patients. That was a hit, but the bigger hit was when they said that you have to have a more intimate doctor-patient relationship. And as far as I'm concerned, I know you guys might think I'm nuts, and that's all right, but I don't think you should have I don't think you need a medical card any more than you need a medical card to buy alcohol. I think your driver's license should be sufficient. I
thought
think
you don't
we
for a
were talking
Section 8
about.
defense, from my understanding.
I'm sorry?
You don't for a Section 8 defense, from my understanding.
Yeah, but I just think we have to clear away the crap and just say, you know what, marijuana is safer than beer. You can produce beer in your own home, so why don't you just leave us alone?
Yeah, but the argument with that, Bruce, is that to win that and to sway public opinion, you're going to want to treat it like alcohol. And the only way alcohol is working in terms of its implementation and legalization is by taxing it, having controls on it, and letting people semi-grow it a little bit in their basement and homes to a certain degree, but not to get too crazy with it. And that's a workable system. And it wins by way of selling it that it has the less dangerous. That's how Colorado passed for legalization.
We should wrap this up and revisit this at some point, and everybody should consider better ways for Third Coast to make money off of any new policy that we come up with.
Awesome. There you go.
Listen, thank you for the outstanding discussion, gentlemen. Very professional and well played on both parts. Thank you for joining Planet Creatures. Bruce Cain, thank you very much. And, of course, Brad Forrester, thank you. We'll have to do this again soon. And, gentlemen, have a great night. And thanks for informing us of all of that.
And thanks
Always
so much for putting up with us.
Always a pleasure, Michael. And thank you, Bruce. I appreciate it. And I did want to give a shout-out to our good friend, John Targowski. I hope he's healing up well.
Sounds like he's back to work.
Back to work, kicking it. All right, guys, have a great...
Okay, thanks. Thanks a lot. Good night.
Well, we're short on time, but I think we have just enough time to get on our spotlight organization. So we have our longtime friend, could it be John Roberts?
Hey, Michael.
All right.
Hey, John.
You hear me?
Hey, thanks for calling in.
Thanks for calling in. What's going on?
Well, I thought I'd give you an update on the Cannabis Cancer Project. As you know, we've been around for a while, for about going over 3.5 years now, we keep having some pretty inspirational cases. And you remember the first one, baby girl, correct?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, she's doing after 3 years of doing small dosages. She's doing great, from what I understand. Last I heard, tumors were shrinking, and she did not require treatment or radiation. That was the last update about 6-7 months ago. And then, of course, we had Alyssa, the 16-year-old, who 2 years ago was diagnosed with that inoperable and curable spiderweb brain cancer. January 15th of this year, she's got a clean MRI. She just brought her prom dress. So that was a great inspiration right there. And, she had some great parents that really stepped up to the plate. Within less than a year, they were self-sufficient. And, I'm really proud of what they accomplished. And then, I guess word's been spreading around about what we've been doing here, and we always get emails, all over the place, all over the country, or all over the world, actually. People asking if we could send them oil, and of course I can't. And I had one in April. A gentleman emailed me, asked if I could help him. He had been battling kidney cancer for the last 12 years, stage 4, and he needed the oil desperately. And he asked how he could get it, and I told him the only way I could help him if he was come to Michigan. Well, the other day, I got an email from him again, because I'm in Michigan. this man, he's a single father, 16, because his wife passed away 7 months ago from ovarian cancer. And, he came first to, California, and went up and down the coast, and he was desperately searching for the RSO, and they didn't really have any good oil there in California. It's not, concentrates are illegal there. So he did get to Michigan, and he contacted me, and had a chance to meet this guy for 2 days. This guy sacrificed everything. Sacrificed his life in Honolulu, Hawaii. Put his daughter on, and packed up his car and his daughter, and put the car on a boat and came to the United States, and in hopes. I had the chance to spend 2 days with this gentleman. He's going to be getting his doctor's appointment here in next couple weeks here in July and June here. July 12th. We'll have his recommendation, and we'll be able to help him right away here. It's just pretty inspirational. One of the things we discussed was, what's the odds of two parents, having cancer at this point in their life, and it was discussed between him and the doctors, and they all pretty much agree. In 1986, him and his wife, they're from Poland. They were only 400 miles away from where Chernobyl went off. People don't realize, here in the United States 2 years ago, we're feeling the same thing here from Fukushima, and they're predicting 1 in 3 cancers in the next 25 years. The rate's going up. Obama, with the EPA, just 2 months ago, signed up the standards on the amount of radiation in drinking water, and the amount of cancers that are going to be associated with it. Our environment is changing, and Obama just made a statement in Berlin just the other day, stating that our biggest threat is climate change. Well, the fact is, our answer is we have to end the petrochemical society, and we need to go back to a vegetable society, and hemp is the answer. And it's proven itself. I've seen over 15 cases of cancer in remission with this oil. So there's the update.
Very, very good. Very good. I don't know that Obama's the cause of there not being a better hemp legislation. I don't think he's. I do think that he could have been better and should have been better on entire marijuana. But
no, what he said, we have, that's our greatest threat is our climate change. He made that statement just yesterday, and returning back to a vegetable-based society is the answer. In my opinion.
Hey, I'm talking to a vegan over here, so I'm all for that. But yes, there's a lot of sickness and disease. I think it's one of the ways that they're driving people into dependency on health care. And I think also even the comments that Bruce made about being self-sufficient. There's a concept of raw foods, of ingesting foods from your own environment. Some of the suggestions of how diseases come about are because things are shipped in from elsewhere, and they're not in the same, they're the same microorganisms, and don't interact with the area that you've grown up in, and they're just whatever. But I only got 4 minutes left, and we're going to have to wrap it up.
Well, if we're going here, I might as well just go ahead and say that yes, I think the diet is a massive, huge part of health concerns, and making modifications to one's diet in more of a vegetable direction is an extremely important aspect of maintaining better health.
Dr. Chad, giving medical advice, none of which anyone here is going to be accountable for.
It has worked for me.
And hemp can replace
personally.
A lot of other issues. It can replace a lot of other pollution and other industrial issues.
I'm just saying switching away from meat and more to a vegetable-based diet as a human being has improved my health immeasurably.
Well, I see it from this perspective. I see it from it's saving lives and improving quality of life. We've given this oil out over to 100 people. I've seen over 15 cases of cancers put in remission with cannabis oil alone. This is the truth. This guy that I met the other day that just keeps inspiring me to keep doing this. look what the lengths that he had to do to come here to this, to get this oil. People are actually begging to do something, and this guy has no other alternative. Medical science right now can't do anything for him.
All right.
And
right. 2 minutes left.
Same with Alyssa. Look what we did. I mean, there's the proof. She's trying to get her story out there. The truth is out there now. This stuff the cannabis cures.
Certainly is.
Yeah, I get to see it from the perspective of our place as well.
All right, John, thanks for calling in. I appreciate the update from the Cannabis Cancer Project. And say hello to our dear friend Peanut Butter. Shouts go out
Yes,
there.
I will. I want to let you know about Peanut Butter's Topical Oil. Go to peanutbutterstopicaloil.com. All proceeds does go help to fund the Cannabis Cancer Project, because it does cost a lot of money to get this oil, because we do not charge the patients. It's strictly donation. Thank you.
There you go. Thank you.
A lot of our patients love this stuff, too.
All right. Any final thoughts, Jamie Lowell?
No.
Chad?
Had a great time at the Birmingham Compassion Club meeting this week, and thanks to all the members out there that are listening.
Well, have a good night, and we'll talk to you next week. Thanks for listening to Planet Green Trees.
Covered in dirty from the land, wash me down. Wash me down. A snake lies sleeping in your hand. Wash me down. Wash me down.